one thing I've noticed as I'm trying to describe sort of the fatherhood journey for me is that I sort of often end up in kind of like cliches or stereotypes or like platitudes. So I'd say like, oh, it's really intense. And then I'm like, what does that even mean, right? But
Right.
it's fatherhood has been hands down the most like transformative experience. And even that is a cliche, right? Like, I've heard parents say this over and over again. It's like, oh, there's a before and there's an after. And for me, that is 100% true. Um, and yeah, I'm kind of cognizant of like the topics that I was kind of, asked to speak about, which are um, loss of freedom and isolation, as I recall.
Hmm.
Um, and it's interesting because I had a very deep shift in my fatherhood journey when my daughter turned like 1.5. And this is also something I've heard a lot is like the father kind of starts really enjoying the journey, like from when the kid is like, 1.5 years old, more or less. And in me, I really noticed that things got a lot easier for me as she started like walking and talking and kind of being more like a person instead of just a small helpless being. But yeah, in particularly in the beginning, I had a lot of like, feeling very like stuck in at home essentially when I had, the baby and my partner was out, and just feeling, yeah, like like where's everyone, and like how do you like take this being somewhere, like on a practical level, on so many levels. I felt, yeah, quite stuck with that. um and so I think I had kind of underestimated that, like the impact of how it would sort of limit my, like I turned 43 last week. So I was already 41 when she came. And so I had a long time, I guess, to sort of, do the Peter Pan thing and uh be free and like travel and like, could say, hey, tomorrow we're off, to surf trip wherever. And that all of a sudden was gone. Um and so I really had to like adjust to sort of this whole new way of living, like an entirely new way of like of living. And so yeah, that's been I think in a nutshell my journey. And again, I think I said it already, but right now, like she's turning 2 in late March. um there's so much more like the love is constantly deepening. So it's been the most heart opening experience I've ever had in my life. um Again, something I've heard, parents say over and over, and now it's like, yeah, it's like really happening. And I'd say for me, my whole developmental journey, my whole spiritual path, if you will, I always come back to like my heart like wanting to open and like open further, and me dealing with yeah, I guess my emotional walls, or trauma related uh yeah, remnants of the past in a way. And like just thinking of her right now, or like imagining her as like there's this warmth and this opening and this like unfolding. And I've also heard people say is like people close to me say like, hey man, you seem like the most stable you've ever been in your life. And I think that's also true, and that's also thanks to yeah, to the kid, to the little one.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
You've written your own book in regards to the journey you've had with your own father, if I remember
Oh yeah.
correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, I have and I'm intuiting that I might not be entirely alone in this particular group with what I'm going to say, and that is that I have a very complex relationship with my father. Um, in some ways, there is something of the stereotype of the absent father in him, or at least me like feeling that lack. And then my mom, his life partner, passed away when I was 17. And I'm very much of a late bloomer, so I was very much still like a child. I was like sort of my current size already physically, but developmentally I was very much a child. So and he wasn't really able to hold the family together, at least emotionally. So it's basically like a bomb went off, and the whole you know the whole sort of safe place that home was gone. And um, that was part of the reason I got depressed like 8 years later. And that was sort of my start of my spiritual path. And then I'm taking very large leaps through my life now, but when I was 37, I was like, I need to reconnect with my father. Like I need to uh, ask him things. I need to like come closer to him. I need to like heal wounds that are there. And then I asked him if he wanted to go travel with me for a month. And to my surprise, he said yes. It was an idea that I actually nicked from my then partner, who did the same thing with her father, and she came like home, beaming and full of stories. And I was like, this is actually quite an amazing idea. And the more I checked it with friends, the more I was like, every time I said it, hey, I'm going to travel for a month with my dad, I was met with like disbelief, right? Like people were like, what the fuck? If I like 3 days, I'm already like, going nuts, right? So it's like, maybe there's something there. And then I proposed, and we traveled. And then I ended up, so again, a long story, but I ended up being actually asked by a publishing house if I wanted to write a book, which is a super honorable thing. And I jumped, yeah, I jumped to the occasion, and I wrote the book. And um, my dad was uh, again like big-hearted enough to actually approve that whole process, because it's a super open book, including all the dirty laundry, if you will, or like all the dark sides and all the trauma. It's just I write it down. So yeah, it was very like I really have to honor my dad for like being a yes to that whole process.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like yeah, that's been. I remember like writing the first chapter and then sending it to him, and then he gave me an email back and said, "Oh, son, I haven't slept last night," and I was like, "Oh man, this is not gonna work, right?" And then I told him, "Listen, I'll write the whole book, and then I'll send it to you." And luckily, because the whole book is obviously more balanced than just the first chapter, and then wrote the whole book, and he was like he was okay with it ultimately. um yeah. And now fatherhood, my own fatherhood, has brought us, like me and my father, like way closer. um because, and again, like I keep coming back to the stereotypes in a way, but like all of a sudden I fucking understand a lot more like how hard it is, to like raise a kid. And there's this whole, I don't know, I'm becoming so much more milder and like I guess more mature in a way, like and also in my sort of harsh judgments towards my own dad. Um, so also, and there's something crazy as well. Like I'm curious here about the other dads in this group. Like all of a sudden I'm looking my dad in the eye, like dad to dad, which is a crazy, like all of a sudden I'm no longer only the son, but I'm also a father myself. So there's a lot more um yeah, looking each other in the eye from the same, height, which we always did physically, but now also like, emotionally in a way. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's a beautiful perspective, one that we haven't actually addressed yet out of the last couple of summits. So if any of the guys wanted to hop in and talk about their own experience with that. Yes. No. Jason, I felt like you were smiling a whole bunch and nodding.
Hey, friends.
I just appreciate it. And yes, definitely, like as I became a dad, I could share, with my father, like, oh gosh, well, like all of those things. And it was the first time we ever acted as peers. And that was insane for me because, you know, we're not, he's still my father, he's still all these things, but at the same time, you know, he wiped my butt, I wiped my kid's butt. Like there is a common experience there. And, you know, as I mentioned earlier, common experiences are meaningful. And so like all of those things, sharing the stories of that commonality. Oh my gosh, I'm so tired. You know, we stayed up late with, you know, the kid, you know, all of those things. And like you, I love how you said it, you know, being able to stand, you know, eye to eye. And even if you were able to do it physically, you can now do it, you know, emotionally, experientially, all of those things. And that's why I was smiling. I just think that's a really powerful sentiment. Yeah.
Jason. Okay, Ty, now it's your turn.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I really like Nils. I like what you said about being able to sort of be eye to eye. And it reminded me of an experience I had recently. I'm in Australia now, and my dad's in Canada. And we've been connecting more since I've been here than we have when I was in closer geographic proximity. And one thing that he said to me a couple months ago was he was actually acknowledging me for being a dad, and he sort of put me on that same level with him as my father. And that was something that I hadn't ever considered or acknowledged before. And it was really nice. And then like along the lines of what Jason said, like it just created this new sort of connection, this new sort of connectedness between my dad and I. And then it opened up more conversation for these stories and this sharing. And I think it all really ties in nicely to I don't like to call it work, but to the work that we're doing to make this beautiful change. It's such an important thing. So yeah, the father son, and thank you also, Nils, for you sharing about your dad's travel experience with you, because I'm just dying for my dad to come spend some time out here with us. In my childhood, my parents were separated, and so I had really limited access to my dad. So I felt like that was something I really missed. I'm really thankful that we're able to maintain a strong relationship. And where the relationship came from is from my dad always being truthful, and showing up with authenticity and truth, and never pretending to be something that he's not. He's always been honorable, respectful, funny, and really enjoyable to be around. And so, those qualities in him have allowed us to maintain a really great relationship, even though our physical presence with one another has been quite limited. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share.
Mm. Amazing.
Thank you so much, Ty. You always have such fantastic insight and different things to share with us here. Joshua, my friend, we got to get that audio fixed. What are we going to do? He's been such a good sport trying to put stuff in the chat for us, struggling with technology today. Yes. So many different things about fatherhood. Calvin.
Yeah, I wanted to share a little bit about fatherhood. My dad was a Vietnam vet, and so he passed away last year in May. And my years knowing him growing up was he was very angry, and I never understood why. So we had a very strained relationship. Once I got into my teens, my parents got divorced, but he did impart this warrior mentality to fight for what's right and to stand when things get tough. And so for him, he wasn't diagnosed with PTSD until 2004. So if you can imagine, trying to have a relationship with him was not easy. So thankfully, toward the end of his life, I relocated to Colorado. I lived in Maryland for 11 years, and I relocated to Colorado because he lived in Colorado. And the last few years, I was able to restore my relationship with him. He was starting to get dementia, start to lose a little bit here and there. However, the times that we did spend with him, with me and my kids at the time, were magical and special. And so that bond of fatherhood gave me an appreciation in spite of all the things that he had gone through in the military, outside of the military, being a civil rights activist. He had a lot to be angry about. And I had to learn how to ask myself if I wanted to be that kind of man. That it's okay to be angry, but not to be controlled by my anger. And so that was a journey in and of itself. And as a father, because I have 6 kids, 5 girls, 1 boy, and I was young, and I was in the military, and so now I'm 51. I turned 52 this year, and my youngest is 17, and she's giving me a run for my money. So we're working through it, and I would have to say that even though all the years were tough and difficult in terms of a relationship, the last few made up immensely for all the tough years that we had. So yes, fatherhood is a definite bond.
Man, every time from now on, I'm gonna feel a little sorry for myself. I'm gonna think about you and your 6. You know, me holding this like 1 and already like feeling, oh, I'm drowning. And then there's men that raise like 6. Wow. Respect. Can I ask you something about your father, Calvin?
Yes, please go ahead.
Did he ever share about his experiences in Vietnam? Like, you know, what he had gone through, or like, or share details of what might have caused the PTSD and all that.
Oh, no, he did not. And I don't think it was his place that he could, because of what he did go through. What I was able to do is I was able to find out from his brother what happened and read the stories. So my dad was stationed in Frankfurt, because I was born in Landstuhl, Germany. And he was in the Army. He was part of a platoon called forward observers. And basically, forward observers are the ones that go into hot zones to prepare for troops to come in to be able to deal with enemy combatants. His platoon were all African-American men. Unfortunately, the commander at that time was a racist and sent his men into hot territory knowing that they would be killed. My dad was the only one that came out alive and wound up sharing with the NAACP, and you can look this all up, what had happened, to the point where the NAACP in the history, the first time in its history, did an investigation, uncovered what the commander was doing and some of the people that were following underneath his command. And because of that, rewrote how men and women in the military are dealt with. That was in late 60s, early 70s. So he was instrumental in making a huge impact on the military. However, he was blackballed, and he was told he had 2 choices. He could either go to DC and live out the rest of his life in quiet and he'd be taken care of, or he would get out. So he chose to get out, and then was blackballed from ever trying to get back in the military ever again. So when he got out, he was an extremely angry person. So I didn't hear any of this. I had to do the research on my own in order to find out all this information.
What is the NCAAP, and what does blackballed mean?
NAACP is an organization that fights for the equality of African Americans, and what they did is that they helped to uncover injustices that have happened, to bring justice to systems that were predominantly against African Americans being able to be promoted or receive jobs or work or things like that, and be treated equally as anyone else. And blackballed basically means that he was kept from any other choices. He had one of two options, and that was it. He couldn't make any more decisions. And so he was either funneled in one way or another, and he couldn't go anywhere else. That's what blackball means.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome.
And Calvin is also a veteran himself.
Mm.
And will be one of our speakers tonight to talk about some pretty significant stuff in regards to father's rights and parental alienation and overcoming slander.
That's correct. So this is a beautiful thing to be able to be a part of and share and encourage fathers, because there's certain, as a father, I'm a Generation Xer. So growing up and watching television and being in the community that I grew up in Texas, fathers were looked up to. We had some that had problems and issues and drank and caused issues. But generally, 9 times out of 10, fathers were respected. Then this change happened around the 80s, 90s, where they started portraying fathers as not smart or bumbling or idiotic or not as apt to be able to share their emotions or whatever. And then that continued for a while. And so my journey has been, what's the truth and what isn't the truth? And what does it mean to be a dad, a real dad? And so I appreciate the men's summits that Alicia has put on, because it gives us the opportunity to be able to actually talk about these things and expose it, and be able to support one another and give encouragement, because being a dad and a father is an extremely difficult yet rewarding opportunity that, as difficult as it's been at times, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's been
Thank you so much for that, Calvin. Guys, I'm interested in how you feel fathers are viewed in the Netherlands.
How
Based off
father
of what,
viewed in the Netherlands.
yes, based off of like what Calvin just said.
Yeah, I don't think I necessarily recognize that description. Like, I don't feel yeah, fathers are portrayed in a particular manner. Yeah, so there's not much resonance, I think, there. I wonder about this topic of, like, are men or fathers, for that matter, struggling more with, sharing their emotions than, say, mothers or women. And there seems to be, and this can be deconstructed on many, like, layers, societal, generational, etc., and so on. But there seems to be a bigger challenge overall, at least from what I can see, in men to connect and share on an emotional level. Don't know if that makes sense, but that's my.
Any of the guys want to pop in? I mean, it makes sense to me. I wonder, what's that journey been like for you?
Yeah, so like I shared, my whole journey can be summarized as like landing in my heart. And I very much recognize like emotional, let's call it armor,
Yes.
that has really like served and protected me earlier in my life when I was just too like fragmented and fragile, I think, on the inside to kind of really open up. That's been a very long process. But it's, I think, also almost like a lifelong process, or something I keep thawing and thawing more and thawing more, and like yeah, really realizing like how essential it is to connect from a heart to heart basis, like from my heart to the heart of the other one or other ones. And in my work, it's basically like sometimes I'm looking over my shoulder and I'm like, wow, how did this happen? But now it's basically in everything I do. It's in all the work I offer. It's in all the yeah, like relationships. My whole social surroundings are very much geared yeah, towards this. So very grateful for that. But yeah, for a very long time in my life, it's very hard to yeah, let basically anyone in. Which is a not a very good place, I guess, to live from.
That definitely, yeah, it's hard to be able to be in that space, but it's really impressive. Like I've watched your journey over the last couple of years as we've spoken back and forth, and it's been really beautiful to watch your evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for saying
Yeah,
that.
yeah, you're welcome. So fatherhood definitely seems to suit you.
Yeah, I think I was very much ready for it. Like I said, I was maybe a little bit late to the party in the sense of, I turned 40 before becoming a father, which to be honest is not that unusual anymore, at least in Amsterdam. But I also have a lot of friends who were like, early 30s, which is a bit more, traditional, I guess. But I'm super happy that I had the opportunity to, yeah, like to go through a lot of growth experiences before jumping on this. Like I feel like I had a chance to sort of like, you know, ripen a little bit more as a human being before, taking on what I think I can safely consider the biggest challenge of my life. So yeah.
To be certain. Yeah, you just missed Silver. He just became a new dad at age 49 with his first child. He had his son.
Oh, the guy who just dropped off, his kid is
Yeah,
still young.
yeah, yeah. His kid,
Hmm.
like literally, isn't his kid like 9 months old? Is that what he said? Yeah, he has a 9-month-old son
Hmm.
and 49 years old, which I think is just amazing.
Yeah.
You guys have any questions for him? What he said already, or if you have something out of the box? He's very wise for his young age of 43.
I've got a question for him.
Go
Can you
ahead,
guys hear
Seth.
me?
We
Okay.
can. And you and your
Sorry,
like fantastic chirpy birds in the background.
one of my earbuds died, so I wasn't sure if the audio still picks up.
You're good.
Nils, you're a breathworks coach or breathworks trained individual. Is that right, Nils?
Yeah.
Could you tell me a bit about, or tell us a bit about what kind of influence breathwork has had on your experience of life in general?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'd be helpful to sort of um like my journey, my developmental journey started off like as I said when I was 25, and then I was faced with depression, and I'm sure it's all over the Western world. The initial route is a little bit similar, where you go to a psychologist, you're probably prescribed antidepressants, and then you have like talk therapy, which is essentially what happened, what they prescribed me, and it helped to an extent, but I always had this like lingering feeling that like I'm somehow not reaching the roots of what's causing this, or like and so I started exploring what was then referred to as the alternative circuit, yoga, meditation, and then one thing led to another, and I was uh, yeah, more and more sort of modalities that targeted more like the body, and like the first step was always like you have to leave your rational mind kind of behind, because a saying I really love is the issue is in the tissue. So meaning there's a lot of like trauma and tension and stuff buried in the actual, tissue of the body. And as long as it's just like speaking, I at least never really like went to the roots. And then breath work was, as were like psychedelics, I'm actually this weekend leading a practice called circling, which is all about relating in a conscious way. Also coming a lot from the body. Like what are you sensing in your body right now as you're connecting? And breath work is just a phenomenally quick and effective way of like temporarily shutting down the mind, or the rational like control center, if you will. Happens within minutes and almost without fail, just through a very simple breathing technique, which just involves breathing in and out deeply and connectedly through the mouth. And within minutes, people seem to like land in their bodies, and then all this stuff that is often stored and repressed and like unacknowledged there like surfaces. So it's a very quick way to like regain, I think, a lot of awareness and like get unstuck what might have been stuck before on a physical, emotional level. I don't think I say anything sort of revolutionary when I say that our culture, and I mean this in the broadest sense, like the Western world is a bit overly focused on the rational mind. In fact, a lot of people, I think, spend 99% of their lives up there because all their job demands is like rational computational capacity. There's the car to get anywhere, etc., and so on. So anything that'll get you into your body, which includes dancing, which includes anything really, but breathwork has been very powerful. Also, by the way, in reaching like more like sort of expanded states of consciousness, and like I've had fairly crazy experiences doing breathwork where I was like, like in heaven in a way, or like in very blissful sort of expanded non-ordinary states. So that's also on the table if you if you go into breath work. But I guess the first layer, and that's the last thing I'll say about it, unless there's more you want to know, but the first layer is usually buried emotions, and in my case that was also true. Like, so there's a lot of like just grieving that happened. And the good thing is you don't have to analyze it. It just happens. You breathe and then the body does it for you. Like the body starts recalibrating. And there's like one thing I discovered is there's this amazing innate intelligence in my body that I could just learn to trust. And like it's really like a way, like giving over the reins temporarily to like my wider being in a way. And I get fucking chills like saying this because it feels so true to me. It's like the relief and the liberation of leaving this part of my being that's always like worrying about the future and ruminating about the past, etc. So yeah, I breathwork is a thing. It's cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Does that answer your question, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm really happy. It answers it in such a perfect way too, especially for anyone who hasn't experienced breathwork, because it did exactly that for me. I don't have extensive breathwork experience. However, when I sort of woke up and started to come back to myself about 2 years ago, it was through connecting with a breathworks coach who actually, I thought I was going to do breathwork, but after I shared some of my story with her about the passing of my younger brother and just some things I've been holding on to, she acknowledged that in fact I didn't have to, I didn't need to do any more doing, and it was time for me to just kind of be still. And she actually offered a space for me to grieve, and I didn't know what grieving was, and it didn't have, there was no prescription for what grieving was for me. And I was really open to it because I was in a really dark place and I needed something. And so I just went with her. And so on that first meeting, and I grieved and I connected with my brother in a way that I didn't know was possible. And much like what you said, you connect to like a higher place and a different, an expanded, an expanded version of reality. I experienced that, and then after that, I went to like a more intentional breathwork session, and it was in that experience that I actually was able to start to experience emotions. And I didn't realize, but for like 24 years, I didn't allow myself to like feel, acknowledge, experience, or move in my emotions through me. They just got buried and covered up with like addiction to work, addiction to substance, pursuit for money, and like this grind that I found myself in as like a man and a father. What I thought was being of best service to my family, but was really actually me like missing my whole life and missing my opportunity to connect with my family, myself, and with the people I love. So breathworks really, it did change everything for me in the most incredible way. So yeah, I'm happy that you just sort of reiterated what I knew from my own experience, but it's cool to know that like that is how it works, and it is that simple. And I wrote down like effective and available tool for reconnection to self, and it's there, and we have it. It's actually like the first thing and the last thing we do in our human form, and it's pretty important, but goes unnoticed because it just happens automatically. But when you put your awareness there, like you say, and do it with some intentionality, new things become available. So yeah, thank you. It does answer my question. Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you.
That was very beautiful, and what a lovely note for us to get to wrap on. It's 2:54 in Eastern Standard Time. We've got about 6 minutes before our fantastic Patrick comes on as our next speaker, also from Australia. So any last words of wisdom, any last questions, comments before we take a break? Or
Yeah, last thing I'll say is that I feel like increasingly encouraged and like happy about what seems to be a very sort of collective. I hesitate to say collective because maybe it's only like still small circles, but sort of a collective awakening to like new possibilities. And like when I started doing yoga, like 15 years ago, it was super esoteric. Like it was really like yoga. Look at it now, and the same is with breathwork. Like at least in the Netherlands, it's everywhere. Same as with like psychedelics, and there's so much like seemingly like bubbling, and people like realizing these things that I'm very very happy and positive about these things.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of this, for sharing your journey and your wisdom and your support of all that are out there. It's always really beautiful to connect with you.
Yeah, and thank you, Alicia, for hosting this.
You're very welcome.
No, it's been a lot of work.
Yes. I will just give an emphatic yes for that, because it is. Calvin has been with me since the beginning, and he gets to hear me and all the comments and feelings I have.
Well, then I guess I'll say thank you, Calvin, as well.
Yeah.
I'm also gonna go because it's 9 p.m. here, and I'm leading this retreat, and I have an early
Yes.
ride tomorrow. So sorry
Please
to miss
do.
you, Patrick. I'm sure you're gonna have a great talk, but I'm gonna leave for now. So
Thank you for honoring it and for taking the time. I know you're very busy, and it's always such a profound and beautiful experience to get to be here with all of you and get to share in this experience. Honestly, it's an honor and a privilege for me, especially as the only woman here, to get to be fly on the wall and holding space for all of it. So until next time, my friends, we will see you around. You can always catch the recordings later.
bye bye.
Bye. All right. And then there were 5. got some troopers. Tyler's like, all right, we're gonna do this. And man, you're moving. All right. Yeah, a momentary stretch for anybody. We've been sitting for a minute. Oh, yeah, just shake those shoulders out. Give yourself a second.